Policy Committee, the last one of the municipal year. So well done us on getting through the first year of the committee system in this committee. I'm going to start off with the usual round of introductions. So if I can start with you, Kelvin, and work round councillors, and then we'll work round officers.
Okay, yeah, Kelvin Blake, I'm Labour Councillor for Hillfields.
Jenny Bartle, Green for Easton, Vice Chair.
Yes, it is depressing. My finger got stuck on it. Serena Ralston, Clifton Down.
Paul O'Rourke, Clifton.
Councillor Tom Reynard, Horfield Ward.
Okay. Councillor Mark Weston, Henbury and Braintree Conservative.
Councillor Fabian Beckles, St George Troopers Hill, Labour Co-op.
Councillor Toby Wells, Green for Knoll.
And I should introduce myself as Councillor Andrew Brown, Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward. And if we can start with officers, I'll start with you, John, and then we'll go on to the benches.
Oh, thank you, Chair. John Smith, Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration. Thank you.
Amy Rodwell, Policy Committee Officer.
Alex Hearn, Director Economy of Place.
Jason Thorne, Service Manager for City Centre and High Streets.
Simon Wilding, Chief Planner.
Jorge Roman, Regeneration Manager.
Shane Wells, Performance Advisor.
Karen Mercer, Bristol Temple Quarter, LLP.
I'm Teagle, Head of Comms for the Temple Quarter LLP.
Simon Cowley, Interim Director of Inclusive Growth at Bristol Temple Quarter LLP.
Brilliant, thank you everyone. We are not expecting any fire alarms today, so if it does go off, if you can exit through the main door and go down the ramp towards the cathedral and assemble adjacent to it, that'd be great. I assume we've no apologies for absence or substitutions because everyone's present and correct. So, moving on to declarations of interest. Do any members have declaration of interest they wish to make? Nope. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Now, these were published as a supplement to the main reports pack and circulated to members. Has anybody got any comments or questions on the content of those minutes? No, in that case, yeah, I was on it. In that case, can I ask for a seconder to confirm the minutes as the correct record? Oh.
Yep, seconded.
Fabian put his hand up, but also Jenny indicated, so I'll leave it to you to note that. Amy, thank you very much. So we've noted those. Next item is Chair's announcements. Now, there's a couple of things I want to share. The first is officer decision notices since the last meeting. There have been none specific to this committee, but there is one that's relevant to this committee. And that was agreed on the 18th of March 2025 by Executive Director for Growth and Regen, John, and with the agreement of the leader. And that was to terminate the agreement that the council had previously entered into to develop Redcliffe Wharf. And that had a bearing on today's meeting because at the same time as that was agreed in the background, there was a revision made to the Bristol Temple Quarter update paper that was advertised as a non-key decision in the forward plan to add in a key decision which is to consider, to defer to the Executive Director the delegated authority to enter into negotiations with the Temple Quarter LLP with regards to optioning, arranging for that land to be enter into an option arrangement for that land for the partnership. So that change to the paper to make that a key decision was agreed between the monitoring officer and the leader using the APR 15 procedure. which allows that to be made at this meeting. So we'll come on to that later when we enter into discuss the Temple Quarter paper. The other things I wanted to pick out for your information is the recent launch of the local industrial decarbonisation plan for the West of England industrial cluster, specifically in the area around, from Bristol City Council point of view, Avonmouth. So that was a project which Bristol City Council officers were involved in the development of, along with West of England officers and the businesses located in the port area of the city. And that's a report well worth looking at, I think. And the other thing I wanted to draw members' attention to was that we have stood up the Employment Skills and Lifelong Learning Advisory Board under my chair, which I will chair. And that's an opportunity for officers of the council to come together with representatives of colleges, the job centre, other agencies in the city that help with our skills agenda. And again, that was a really worthwhile meeting and an opportunity to share learning and seek to advance what we're doing in the arena of skills for the city. So those are my announcements. The next item on the agenda is public forum, and we've had one statement in from Carol Casey. Now, Carol's not able to speak today, but Sarah Pearce is attending on her behalf. Sarah, we've all had your statement and had an opportunity to read it, but if you can summarise it, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to councillors as well. So I'd like to just read a summary, as you've said. So we want to develop a South Bristol strategy to develop, regenerate and grow South Bristol. We must prioritise health and well-being, not just now, but for the years to come. The strategy must focus on improving infrastructure, local economy and community services to deal with the social inequality, health and job opportunities in the area. It doesn't make sense to remove an existing facility, such as an athletics track, and incur huge cost, 14 million, in reciting a family cycling club, when we can include them and innovate integrated provision alongside hospital with rehabilitation, college, student fitness, with football and rugby. So with creative thinking, we can also accommodate the housing. Deprivation in Hartcliffe, Withywood, Philwood, Hengrove and Whitchurch Park and Stockwood has increased over 40 years. It's now a dormitory town. Since the outline planning approval 6 years ago, there have been major increases in the provision with the Philwood playing fields, and we don't need more pitches on Hengrove Park. This plan for 127 dwellings is 64 dwellings per hectare, infill sites in the centre regularly reach 100 and over 200. Council planners assumed that Broadwalk Shopping Centre was the town centre for South Bristol, but this is now changed. So there are plenty of reasons why you need to take action now. Be bold and agree to a major review of South Bristol. The athletics facility is a necessary resource for the future social and economic well-being of the whole community. Athletics is a social community programme bringing children of primary age right through to teenagers and adults in their 70s. It engages parents, carers, provides a focal point for interventions in nutrition and physiotherapy. It includes rehabilitation and sport for college students. It incorporates the Family Cycling Centre, which involves those with disabilities. 5,000 people in our petition agree with this. The area needs a bigger vision. The Green Party policy on health and well-being is prevention over cure and enhance local communities and promote sustainable neighbourhoods. The Green Party manifesto commits to fostering vibrant, sustainable and inclusive neighbourhoods. The current plans are the opposite. Begin now to create thriving neighbourhoods and engage with us before, really, it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, thank you. So next is the agenda item. Agenda item 7, the Bristol Business Improvement District, proposed by Visit West, and Jason Thorne is going to be speaking to this.
Okay, so the purpose of this report is to provide information on the proposed Bristol Business Improvement District, to seek delegated authority on a number of bid-related matters, and to note the position of the council as the levy payer and delegate the voting responsibility to the Chief Executive. So Bristol's been at the forefront of bids for over 20 years now. Bids are basically where the business community comes together and puts together a proposal, and then that business community gets to vote on additional projects that they would like to see delivered in a specific area. And then there has to be a ballot that we hold as a council. And in terms of those that vote, 51% have to be in favour by number and by rateable value. So Broadmead, one of the first in the country, here we are, 20 years later, still talking about bids and supportive of them. Legislation to support business improvement districts is set out in the Local Government Act 2003 and the Bid Regulations 2004. So there are currently 4 business improvement districts in Bristol: Clifton Village, Broadmead, the city centre, Redcliffe and Temple. The latter 3 are all operated by Visit West. I need to draw your attention to an error in Appendix A at the moment. So where it talks about the Broadmead bid, the levy applied should read 3%. So the gallery's 1.5%, and any exemptions are under 13,000, not as recorded in the appendix. And that'll be amended in the minutes. That'd be great. So what Visit West are seeking to do is create a new, wider bid for the whole of the city centre, which will effectively see the city centre and Broadmead terms run until the end of their terms, which October 27 and October 2028. And rather than take Redcliffe to reballot in later this year, they'd go with that wider area. So the terms of those 2 other bids would still run until their terms come to an end. So investment into the city centre over a 5-year period is up to 18 million. So at the moment we are planning to hold that ballot in June, July, but that is subject to potential change because we are in liaison with Visit West about the final agreement around the voter list, and there's some issues around that to be resolved. But that's the current plan, subject to change. So if the ballot is approved later on in the year, the bid will run for a 5-year period from November 2028. All the businesses and other occupiers within the area will be charged 1.9% of their rateable value. There's a map setting out the new proposed boundary on page 3 of the report. And then what they have to do when they're producing their bid proposal is set out, normally by theme, what they're looking to invest in, and that investment has to be above and beyond what we as a council are already doing. So the bid have set out the proposal under the following 4 themes: experiences and promotion, clean and welcoming, safe and supported, sustainable and green. And this kind of streamlining, bringing together various bids is taking place in other major cities as well. So other comparable cities are Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle. And then what I've done from paragraphs 12 onwards, which I don't propose to go through in any detail, is basically highlight the point that the council has many different roles in the development of business improvement districts. So we have a duty to help the bid develop the proposals, we collect the levy, we take it to a ballot. If we've got properties within the area ourselves, we will be a levy payer ourselves as well. And the financial implications of this bid are set out under the financial implications of the report. Do you want me to take you through the recommendations, or do you want to come back through those later?
I'm happy to comment on those.
Sorry, you want me to take you through those?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So that's it from me. Welcome any questions.
Thanks, Jason. So just on that, there is a number of recommendations, one of which is to endorse council support for the proposal. I am minded to take the vote for all the recommendations together at the end, unless there is any expression of dissatisfaction with that particular proposal during the questioning debate. So if anybody doesn't feel like the council should be supporting that proposal, voice it during the debate, and I'll have a separate vote on that. Otherwise, we'll vote for all the recommendations together, and those are that we note that the Economic Development and Business Rates teams have considered the bid proposal and ensured it doesn't conflict with formal policy, check the financial arrangements and ensure that the levy rules are fair and deliverable and in accordance with the regulations. And we would also authorise the formal management of the ballot process, authorise the Chief Executive to exercise our voting rights on behalf of the Council, and that subject to a yes vote, we would then be the billing authority for the bid, and that we would obviously have to meet our own obligations in paying the bid levy. And finally, the final thing that we'd be authorising the council to do would be entering into an operating agreement with Visit West. So those are the things that we are looking at doing, and Fabian's first with his hand up, so come to you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. I mean, if the merge goes ahead, I think it's a no-brainer to have one bid entity working together rather than three working potentially against each other. But if we, if it starts, this new one starts in 25, and then another one goes in 2 years later in 27, and then Broadmead goes in 28. That's only 2 years of it working as one single bid. Is it possible to merge the other bids more quickly? Could that be looked at? I just think economies of scale. It's just the sooner it's working as one unit, the more it can do.
Effectively, they'll be working as one unit, but they still have to follow the rules that are set out in their business plan until their terms have run out, because that's what people have voted on previously.
Unless, of course, they voted at this point, if everyone's going to be balloted on this, if they all voted to consolidate, should we put that to the ballot?
So I think the way to look at this is there's existing bids that with the term coming to an end, but the proposal being put for the purposes of this new ballot for the city centre, the priorities are aligned, and so effectively you'll see the delivery of the new bid. The existing bids will come to an end, but the actual activities will be very closely aligned, and the leadership and management of the overall bids will be unified. So I don't think you'll see a divergence because of the new proposal in terms of the activities on the ground.
Another question I've got is, what's the bid's role in helping businesses and the galleries relocate? Because obviously that's going to be redeveloped, and hopefully during the next 5 years work will actually start on it. But there's key businesses in the site, obviously the only post office is in there and a few others as well. How we, what's happening about helping businesses relocate?
Thank you, Chair. So essentially, we will work. The bid will work in partnership with the council and those affected businesses to consider what can be relocation plans. But there's no formal provision to relocate businesses from the galleries. When the centre is does come forward for development, it will be because the developer and the owner is able to do so because the tenancies of the buildings come to an end. But where there are opportunities for businesses to relocate and where businesses wish to relocate, then we at working with the bid will look to support that.
Thank you. So I've now got Toby, Mark, Paula, and I think I just saw Jenny's hand.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's a good proposal and I hope it succeeds, but I just wanted to ask a clarification of what happens if it does fall at this ballot. Is it that the Redcliffe and Temple bid would cease to exist, but the others would then continue for reballot on the normal cycle?
It's exactly that. So Redcliffe, there would be a hole until they decide what they were going to do, but the other two bids would remain until their terms end.
Okay, Jenny, do you want to comment not specifically on this point?
Yeah, I'm confused about what will happen if the opposite happens, because so I guess I want to ask what the ballots are, because there's a ballot to merge and form this new bid, but if the two bids that aren't up yet vote against it, Redcliffe will have sort of been missold because they're being sold on the idea that it's going to be a merger. So would that require another ballot afterwards?
So it's not being promoted as a merger from a kind of bid proposal kind of perspective, really, because the only way we can handle an election is, do you support this bid proposal, yes or no? So the detail of how each one ends its term is set out in the business plan and will need to be made clear during the ballot process so that people know what they're voting for.
Thank you. Mark, you were next on my list.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of concerns, if that's all right. One of them is looking at Appendix G, Options Appraisal Matrix. If we don't approve it today and then it goes out under the current scheme, then it says Redcliffe and Temple bid risks failing at ballot. Surely that's just a standard part of it, or do we actually think the businesses in Redcliffe and Temple are likely to vote against any bid we put forward? It just seemed a strange sentence. Basically, are we relying on a larger bid process from the other areas to drown out the Temple and Redcliffe bid to get it through?
That's not what we're relying on. I think there's a risk with any bid ballot that it could be for or against.
Okay.
We've got to carry that out in a democratic way to ensure that businesses have a chance to have their say.
All right. Then my question then, of the 10, this is page 10, the bid proposal summarised below, and then it talks about experiences and promotion. I think one of the problems is when you enlarge this and you go from three bids to one, there's an economy of scale. There's also a worry that sometimes you lose the local nuancing that localised bids allow you to do. And this particularly gets concerning when you talk about experiences and promotion. If we're going to roll these other bids in, what assurance do they have that their promotional material isn't going to become all focused at the galleries or somewhere else, and that they're going to lose that ability to market themselves? Businesses are about to be clobbered a bit at the moment, so what assurance do we have, or do they have, that they're not about to be drowned out by the larger Temple bid?
Thank you, Chair. So of course this is the bid promoters' proposition, not the council's. It's the council's responsibility to hold the battle.
But you're asking us to support.
Of course, no, I get that. So the bid promoter will prepare a business plan, and it's that which the ballot will be upon. If the vote is passed and there is this bid for the city centre, then there will of course be ongoing governance where the bid management team need to be accountable for their activities in relation to the business plan to the business community. So that is their mechanism for holding the leadership of the bid to account.
Right. In that case, on the recommendations, recommendation number 3, endorse council support for the proposal. Can I just clarify, by that do we mean simply endorse that we should go from 3 bids to 1 bid, or are we endorsing a business plan we've not really seen yet?
So the only real way that we can not endorse the business plan is if it has any formal conflict with council's policies, which we've checked, and it doesn't. But just to pick up on the point Alex was making around the governance, we've already provided them with feedback that if they've got an advisory board or a board that's guiding the bid, it must represent the sectors within the city centre, but also be, widen its geographic coverage so that different parts of the bid area are actually represented at the decision-making table and guiding it.
Chair, unless someone else can tell me differently, in which case I apologise to colleagues, I've not seen a business plan, so I'm not quite sure what the bid is going to go out to ballot. I'm happy to support a proposal to send this to ballot. I'm happy for it to be from 3 bids to 1. I'm not happy with the council taking an opinion and us saying the council should have an opinion until we've seen that. I don't know what's in that business plan. I would never sign off on a carte blanche and say, yes, absolutely, whatever's in it, we agree. I'd like to see it. I'm happy for this to go, absolutely. But for me, I want to see the business plan before I say, yes, the council should support it.
So, in terms of the business plan that the council has seen, certainly in an officer capacity, is that that the levy rules are fair and it's accordance with the regulation, as opposed to, do we like this priority over that priority? It's that which is put to the ballot. So, as a ballot holder and also as a business rates authority and the collector of the levies, the opinion has been provided in a professional capacity that it's in line with the regulations, as opposed to has sufficient investment been put in promotion and experience. So it's that which is put to the ballot.
I'm not satisfied with that. I'm really sorry.
Tom, I'll bring you in on as a minutes on this point. Paula, you're still in the queue. I was just going to bring in Tom on this point, though.
Okay, I've got a point on this point too.
Sorry, yes, mine's direct. I'm actually, now that you're saying that, Councillor, I'm quite concerned because we are here as councils making the decisions, and we should be given all the information that we need in order to make a robust decision. And seeing the business plan feels quite fundamental to that. So I think we're going to have to do something about these recommendations, because I'm uncomfortable. But we should have had the information provided to us in full to be able to make an informed decision on this. And I think that's probably a bit of a learning point for officers. It's not just to take it as an assumption that we'll just leave you to it in terms of information that's not been provided to us. We do want to see that detail, because we may have questions on that detail.
Paul, I'll bring you in.
Can I just clarify on this? From my understanding, I disagree with Tom, from my understanding, because, and let me just share what I understand it with everybody and see how we feel about it. Yeah. So there's the whole thing about the legal thing about is the levy fair and all of those sort of things, and that's the outline business plan for this new move for the amalgamation. But the business plan, from my understanding of the way bids work, is the bid chair and the manager and the levy payers, or the committee all get together and they decide for the next years that these are the projects that they need to focus on, and that's what their business plan is, and they put that forward to their levy payers when it comes to the referendum, and then they have 5 more years to deliver those things, and so it goes on. So it's actually very discreet to the bid levy payers. So it's not something that I feel that we have to have oversight of. I do have 2 other questions.
And I would add to that, that in the papers there's a link to the consultation document which outlines their priorities. Now it's not, depends what you call a business plan, so it's not necessarily got entire breakdown of figures, but it talks about what can be raised and the priorities of what would be, of what the bid would be looking to spend the raised funds on. And that's, it's a, I can see, Tom, you're looking for it. It's a hyperlink at the bottom of one of the pages, at the very top of page 13. Is the consultation document, but that is a document that outlines the priorities of the bids. Jenny, I saw your hand up again.
I wanted to come back to Mark's point. I think he's misinterpreted what the recommendations are, although I'm willing to be corrected on that. But from what Mark was saying, I think you were saying that you thought we were endorsing. Well, I'm not sure what you thought we were endorsing, but it's not the business plan. The proposal is that we do the merger. So you said you were happy that we would.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to get clarification on at the moment.
Yeah. So I was the impression that point 3 on the recommendations was that we support the merger and we delegate authority to the chief executive to exercise voting rights. However, that's not instructing this chief executive to vote in a particular direction. So if the chief executive then sees the business plan and is like, this is terrible, so what we're authorising is for this proposal to go to ballot. That's what we're endorsing, not the specific thing in the business plan. It's the only thing that we're endorsing is the merger. That the merger be put to a ballot.
No.
Is that not correct?
Not my understanding. Sorry.
Oh, that was my understanding.
If I may, Chair. So it's not, apart from exercising its vote in the ballot, it's not the council's business plan to direct in terms of content. We are the business rates authority, so it's the council's job to collect levies from businesses. Therefore, if we're going to do that, there needs to be a mandate for the council to do that, which is the ballot. So the proposal is to hold a ballot on a new bid for Bristol. That ballot will be held, and if businesses support the business plan, they may be minded to vote for it. If they don't, they may be minded to vote against it. And the council, in its capacity of having hereditaments in the bid area, has a vote, and that it's that vote which is delegated to the CEO. But it's not for the council to direct the content of the business plan.
So, but what's recommendation 3? Endorse council support for the proposal.
To have a ballot for this new bid.
There you go. So does that sort it, Mark and Tom?
No, because the next point is we are then telling the chief exec, or the director rather, to vote basically however he likes in the bid. With the councillors, don't we get the vote on that?
Can so I think the analysis is right. I mean, that councillor, this is obviously not the first time we've done this. I think it's fair to say every other time we've done it, including the most recent ones, 2023, 2022, 2020, were done on this basis. So that's not meaning to say that you can't change it, but...
Was there any cabinet input at that point?
The decisions made at Cabinet are very similar to the decision you're being asked to make today. But just to reiterate Alex's point, it isn't the role of this committee or the council to adopt or sign off the business plan. The only thing we can do is not take it to a ballot if it conflicts with any of our formal adopted policies.
So there are two things, Jason, aren't there? So it's to run the ballot, which I think there's very limited grounds to refuse to do that. But we are asking the councillor to agree to run the ballot. And then there is to delegate to the chief exec to make the decisions as a local business, as it were, as part of the ballot. And I think all we're flagging on that is historically that has been delegated to the chief exec in this way. And just to be absolutely clear, they've generally voted in support of the proposals. I think that's right. But that, in terms of the timing of the process, if councillors wanted to change the approach we've taken before, I don't think that's a particular problem. We could share the business plan and they could either seek further input via the chair into the chief executive's delegated authority, or would there be a further committee in which they would wish to get to vote in terms of what the council's position on the actual business plan is? I mean, that's something that could be done. It's not something you've done before, but it's something I think you could do.
My understanding, sorry.
Pain in the butt here, aren't I?
No, my understanding was that we were, that point 3 is seeking our endorsement of the proposal, i.e. the merging of the 3 bids, and, in indicating our support for that, particularly as it does have a revenue cost to the council. So therefore, that's what my understanding is, that was what we were here to do today. So I'm slightly lost at the moment, given some of the replies to some of the questions, and there's also a field of hands in front of me, and I have lost track of who was in which order. So can I pick up? So I would like absolute clarity on the point about what we're endorsing in point 3 before we proceed further. Because for the record, I'm supportive of the bids coming together and supportive of us moving forward on the basis of the consultation documents, the paper that's before us and the consultation documents that's provided. That's where I'm at.
And Chair, I think the paper just talk about the proposal being merging the 3 bids, doesn't it? So I think you're right.
Mark.
I realise I've caused confusion. So number 3 is endorsing having the bid and the 3 going to 1. Got no problem with that. 4 is authorising the chief executive to exercise the voting rights on behalf of the council. Personally, I think there should be some form of democratic oversight to that. Might I suggest number 4 is authorise the chief executive to exercise voting rights on behalf of the council in the bid ballot in consultation with the chair and vice chair.
I think that's a sensible proposal. And
I've just dropped Kelvin in it. Oh, sorry, Jenny, my apologies. I'm on another committee where he is the vice chair, so apologies.
Do we need to do a formal amendment to the paper, or okay?
Now somebody's going to have to guide me through the legalities of this, constitutional niceties of this.
So if that's something that you want to put forward as a formal amendment, we'd have to get a seconder on that and then take the vote. And
I'll second that.
I'm not sure, Chair, if you might want to take any more questions on the report before we go to a vote.
We'll leave that on the table. We'll come to it when we come to the votes, and if I can ask for fresh hands for moving the conversation on. Right, Paula, you were already in my queue to come back to, and I've seen Serena's hand and I've seen Tom's hand.
Are you waiting for me to answer the question? Right. So I broadly am in support of this, but I have 2 concerns. And one is, what are the unforeseen consequences that might be for the sole remaining lone bid, which is poor old Clifton? And there are specific things about that. In 2023, late 2023, the new administration costs for administering the levy for Clifton increased by 300%, and I got a bit involved with the rates department, the business rates department, about trying to understand why that happened. And I am concerned that because if Clifton is left very isolated, there are two issues. One is that, you know, there are a small number of levy payers, so a cost, a huge, I don't want to say the exact cost of the administration here, but, you know, it is a high proportion of what the actual overall levy is. And it might at some stage become I think this might be making the whole Clifton thing a lot less viable, and I have a concern about that, particularly because there are these, I'm going to say the word hereditaments in Clifton are uniquely of small independent businesses, which are probably more expensive to administer. And if you can see that if you have a very large bid in the city centre with big national and international companies that are very easy to collect, that, you know, in a couple of years' time it could seem to be that Clifton ends up becoming unviable because of that. And I just wonder why Clifton was never ever included as part of it. Would we not be better off having instead of having one isolated one? And then supplementary to that, what does this mean for other smaller bids? I mean, I know that there are other areas around the city that might want to have their own bids. And what's the thought about that? I mean, I know it's not something exactly that we have to talk about today. So I'd like to have that question answered. And then my second question, can I ask two questions at once? My second question is, it's a lot more about actual transparency. And Jason, you mentioned something there about difficulties with understanding who the voters or who the levy payers or who these people could be. From my understanding, there's no real clarity for the bids themselves on who the voters are, who actually pays the levies, where the administration cost is, and you know, there is no transparency on that. And I've had conversations with people in the business rates department to try to get clarity on it. And to be honest, I haven't been able to do that as an individual. So I think, you know, as a member of this committee, I would ask that some proper work is done about understanding. I mean, I think the majority of people would think that if you pay a levy, the people who are administering it would know exactly who the levy payers are. They don't know that. What the gross income is, they do not know that. And where the deductions are made, they don't seem to know that either. So we're administering it, and that's what we're being asked to vote today, is that we will administer it. I think we maybe need to do it with more clarity, more transparency, and maybe with more efficiency. So can we have some guarantees that a bit of work would be done on that before we go forward to the ballot in October?
Thank you. Alex,
so if I may, on the Clifton question first, if I may, Chair. So I think the point you're making is that with a large bid, it's easier to burden the costs of administering the bid than a smaller bid, because there are larger and more hereditaments than in the Clifton bid, which is smaller and fewer. So I'm very aware of that, and the economic development team that I'm responsible for, and I will be working with the business rates team to ensure that the costs of administration as a result of this proposal do not lead to the unintended consequences of making it prohibitively expensive for other bids to exist, whether they are existing bids like the Clifton bid or some other smaller bid at some point in the future. That's contrary to our priorities from an economic development perspective, but also is arguably anti-democratic as well. So I'm acutely aware of that. In terms of the information about who pays the rates and who votes, the vote needs to be cast by the ratepayer. And the business rates team do maintain a list of who pays the rates and the rateable value of each hereditament, and therefore, because of the percentage applied to of the rateable value that's applied to the payment of the levy, that value is also understood. I think I will take away to work with the business rates team to ensure that we are better at publishing more transparent information about the council's costs that are incurred and met by the bids for the administration. The bids themselves do publish how they spend their own money to their members, the people who vote for them. But I think there's probably some learning for the council to do about its own administrative costs.
I mean, you may know about it, but the bid managers don't know about it. That's my point. That's what I'm being told, is that they quarterly get a sum of money, but they don't know, how proportionate that is to all of the money that came in, and they don't actually know who their levy payers are. And I mean, I know that this may be a GDPR issue, but surely there must be some workaround on that, because I think it would be a more cohesive, and I think certainly from the bid in Clifton, it would make it more enduring. I think if you could build a sense of team, but it feels like everybody's working in the dark, and that seems a bit unnecessary.
John's got an answer to this.
Thank you, Councillor. I think there's at least two issues wrapped up in that. So the first one is about sharing information about which ratepayers are paid, and the second one is, as Alex was saying, who is the relevant ratepayer, and therefore who actually gets to give their ballot in the bid, and actually, if there's agreement from the ratepayer, how can that change? It is extremely complicated, I'm afraid. We have been poring over the regulations to try and get to the bottom of both of those issues. We actually had a high-level meeting with the Chief Exec and CFO this morning to work through that. And we're working very closely with the bids. So please let us come back to you once we work that through with the bid teams that we're working with, because I do think we can make some progress about finding a way through those challenges, you say, in order to share more proactively information with them. I'm confident we can do that. But at the moment, yes, we've got rather bogged down in the regulations, I'm afraid. But we are making... So that's why we've had this high-level meeting, to try and clear the issues through.
Thank you, John. I had Serena, and then I had Tom, and then I might look to wrap this up because we've been going some time on this.
I just wanted to understand, Chair, a little bit more about the implications for the council as a non-domestic ratepayer. So, basically, to put it crudely, the bid areas are expanding. Is it per individual organisation, or is it based on the properties you have? I'm assuming it's just one hit as an organisation. Forgive me, I don't know.
It's per hereditament or per property. Sorry? It's per property.
So what's the cost implication for us there? That must be quite considerable. Do we have a lot more properties in the expanded area which would be affected?
Yeah, so at the moment the levy that we pay to those areas at the moment is 62,000, and it will increase to almost 98,000 in November, and then in 26 we're increased to 116,000.
Thanks. I saw that. I just wasn't sure if that was because of the amount of properties that we had. Okay, that's fine. And my other question is very simply, I think this is more of a comment than a question. I suppose I have mixed feelings about this because I can see the advantages of the bids, but I worry about the burden, particularly on small businesses, because they're struggling as it is with national insurance contributions going up and energy prices going up. So I suppose there's an element of concern there about how those independent businesses will fare, and that if there's no opt-out, is there, if they don't want to take part in this.
Sorry.
No, follow. Is there any support for those small businesses in that case?
I think go on.
You're right, it wasn't a question, but I think the point to remember is that the business plan for the bids tend to be to support business. So while inevitably there is a cost to business, the intention is that it improves trading conditions for business through the priorities of the business plan. So that's why they exist, whether it be a cleaner environment or programming events to drive footfall. That's why they exist. But I appreciate that some businesses who choose to vote no may do so on the basis that they don't see that value.
And I think, and I've not got a can't find all the figures immediately to hand, but I think the threshold is rising for at least one, if not all, of the bids between the. So there's a bit threshold above which you pay the levy, and it's different for each of the bids at the moment. And in the merger and in the proposal, that will rise for at least some of the businesses, some of the areas covered. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there, anybody with a rateable value of £29,999 or less will be exempt from paying the levy.
Thank you. Tom, final question. Kelvin's just snuck in.
Thanks. Just a couple of things, mainly governance. But I think what Councillor Weston's proposing sounds sensible. It is ultimately where we have to sign off something that's got an £18 million cost there with it, or revenue generation, hasn't it, over the lifetime of the bid. It references in the papers. And I think there's probably a learning point for probably the very brief drafting there is for number 3. I think if that was just a bit more expansive, it would have cleared up some of the immediate confusion. But I think just want to be clear, it's not about instructing things in a business plan. From a governance perspective, it's about having the information available to make a sound decision. And that's where I'm labouring the point, right? And so if we're being asked to improve a proposal and therefore the business plan that you have seen, as officers, but not shared with us who are being asked to sign off that decision, for me that's a problem. I think where you then get into is tricky territory where if councils were inclined, I don't think there would be in this case, it could be called in on the basis and risk an escalation panel, protracted process that then would just delay everything, because whilst it's in that type of process, you can't move forward with the decision. So I think all I'm saying is going forward, I think perhaps just make sure that information, just have a think about what information councils might want to see, and there may be a difference of view between officers on that, but I'd certainly like to have the detail to be able to understand decisions I'm making in full. So I'll stop labouring the point now. I think the amendment will deal with it to a level of satisfaction and put that democratic oversight in. So,
thank you, Tom. And Kelvin, last word.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, this council's great at turning a good news story into a bureaucratic nightmare. I mean, personally, right? I think we should be encouraging bids, and one thing we have to be is as slick with our costs, right, as possible. My worry about this is that that businesses will invest in their own future, but if there's sort of this black hole of costs potentially that we're incurring in supporting those bids, then I think it's really important that we're transparent. I just want to re-emphasise that point, that businesses understand that the councils does incur a certain amount of costs in administrating these bids, but the costs are transparent and they're not overly expensive. Yeah, we can show some value in it. I know that Paula was making this point, and I think it's really important, because I would love a bid in Hillfields on Lodge Causeway, right? All those businesses, because actually one thing that we've got at the moment is businesses not talking to each other and actually sort of trying to outdo each other. And I think a bid is a way of actually coming together and investing in your local area. So for me, let's try and expand these things and make them as positive as possible.
Thank you, Kelvin. That's a nice positive, pretty positive note to end on. Let's move to a series of votes then. So it's been suggested to me that if any of these things, if there was any contention with any of the individual points, I need to go through a line-by-line vote. So that's what I'm going to do. So first of all, is to note that the Economic Development and Business Rates teams have considered the bid proposal to ensure it does not conflict with any form adopted by the Council, check the financial arrangements and ensure the levy rules are fair and deliverable in accordance with the regulations. Can I have a seconder for that element? Nope. I saw Mark's hand first. And all in favour? Lovely. So that's unanimous. I'll give Amy time to catch up. And the second vote is on authorising the formal management of the ballot process in accordance with the bid regulations. Again, can I have a seconder? Jenny, I saw Jenny first there. And all in favour? So again, unanimous. Third is to endorse council support for the proposal. Can I have I've got Mark seconding, and all in favour? So that one's unanimous. Now I have to move what's on the paper first. So, does anybody wish to second the proposal that we authorise the Chief Executive to exercise voting rights on behalf of the Council in the bid ballot? We have no seconder, so that falls, I assume, automatically. Yeah. And therefore, Mark, do you want to formally propose what you were suggesting?
Sorry. Authorise the Chief Executive to, comma, in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair, exercise voting rights on behalf of the Council in the bid ballot.
Okay, and is there a seconder for that proposal?
Yes,
oh,
I'll second that.
Okay. Fine. So all in favour of that as a proposal? So that is then unanimous. Lovely. And that moves us on to section 5, which is subject to a yes vote by bid. So, sorry, Paula, are you wanting to?
But just going back to the points, is that a lot of what I was asking about is in 5. So could we just have some sort of verbal assurance that that at our next meeting or at a further meeting, we will have some report about the improvements of clarity and transparency and the collection of the levies?
Very happy, and for the minutes to, if you'd like, Chair, to bring back a paper on that so that members can see it and discuss it, and if required, invite the business rates team to come along.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. So, subject to that proviso, but not necessarily making a formal amendment, section 5 is that subject to a yes vote at bid ballot. We note that the council will be the billing authority and will manage the billing, collection and the levy. Collection of the levy and financial contributions and its transfer to Visit West. Note that the council meet the council's obligation in paying the bid levy as a non-domestic ratepayer in the bid in accordance with the bid regulations over the lifetime of the bids, and authorise the council entering into an operating agreement with Visit West. That's a lot of words. Do I have a seconder for that? Jenny? And all in favour? Lovely. So we have got through that with the one amendment, the first amendment in this committee. So at that point, it's normally customary for us to take a break about an hour in, and we are just about an hour in. So if we take a 5-minute comfort break and then come back for the Temple Quarter paper. Thank you, everyone. So now we are moving on to agenda item 9, which is the Temple Quarter update paper. So, John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Chair, you in the introductions, you obviously mentioned that we've got colleagues from the Temple Quarter LLP with us, Karen Mercer, the Chief Executive Officer, and 2 senior colleagues. I'm just going to say a few things about the paper that's before you, and then we'll throw open to questions. And if that's okay with you, colleagues from the LLP may well be involved in answering questions as well. Okay, so councillors, this is an update on the progress on the Temple Quarter Major Regeneration Programme. The Limited Liability Partnership was incorporated just over a year ago. Karen and the team have been working with the various members of the LLP to put in place a series of important contractual arrangements to enable the LLP to become operational and to start a procurement process, including a series of land options whereby the partners are going to pool their land to make sure that there's a holistic and inclusive regeneration process. So there has been an oversight group looking at the work that the LLP has done. That's actually been chaired by the leader of the council, and regular briefings to chairs of various committees, including yourself, Chair. I've been the council's representative on the board of the LLP for the last year, including being interim chair of the board. But as you've seen in the paper, councillors, I'm delighted that the LLP has now appointed a permanent chair who's going to start in the middle of next month. She's an extremely experienced regeneration professional, currently the CEO of the London Legacy Development Corporation. So it has been that's obviously a really significant moment for the project. So it's a key part of the work of the LLP to appoint a private sector partner to bring forward the development of major parts of the scheme, and I'm delighted to say that procurement process was also launched last month. There's an update on the various elements of the programme in the paper. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but it includes the really significant station improvements, including a number of new entrances, includes some information on the 500 million University of Bristol investment in its enterprise campus right next door to the station, and a number of other emerging developments. There's also an update on the master planning process, both for the area around the station named Temple West, and also for the significant area to the east of the station, the St Philip's Marsh area, which is very much an ongoing process and is intended to be completed by November of 2025. There's also detail on the inclusive and sustainable growth work that the team have been doing, including the launch of the Bristol Temple Quarter Social Value Charter, which happened last month at the launch of the procurement. It was launched by the leader of the council. There's also, Chair, as you referred helpfully to at the start, an update on the Redcliffe Wharf site. That site has a long history of attempted development. We actually appointed a private sector development partner in 2012, would you believe? And we've been working with various partners to try and develop that site for some time. We actually got a brownfield land release grant for some money to be spent if we were able to develop that site under the then plan back in 2022 of just over £500,000. Despite a number of attempts and work with the current arrangements, we took the decision under the delegated authority for Redcliffe Wharf to terminate that current development agreement in consultation with the Chair of Strategy and Resources under the terms of that then delegation, and we have included an option in this paper to commence discussions with Karen and the LLP team about including that as an option in the private sector procurement at that site to bring it forward that way. That's all I wanted to say. Happy to take questions.
Brilliant, thank you. So the recommendations on this are, again, like the previous item, in a series of parts. I will propose taking them all as one, again, depending on how the discussion goes in the meantime. Who wants to start with questions or comments on this? Oh, lovely. Thank you, Mark. Right, saw Fabian's hand and then Serena.
Yeah, I just wanted a little bit more information on what we're doing to ensure that the somewhat deprived areas around the Temple Quarter, are going to be, enabled to benefit. How are they going to be included? Are we going to be aiming the, jobs that will be created by this in their direction and things like that, so they can also benefit from this? A second question is, there's reference to rapid transit from the station. Could we have a bit more detail on that? Obviously long overdue, but a bit more detail would be great.
Okay, Jen. Sorry.
I was wondering if anyone from the team wanted to respond, but if you want to respond initially. Well, I was going
to suggest, we are working very much to bring those social value, including local jobs and working with community organisations. I'm very happy if Simon's happy to talk about that in a bit more detail. But it was about the linkage with mass transit that you asked, Councillor Walsh. I think colleagues will be happy for me to deal with that one. So that is something that, as you know, that program is a really significant program being led by the West of England Combined Authority Councillor. We are expecting after the election to a further stage to come forward on that. So we are expecting further developments on that. It's something that the Combined Authority are working closely with the LLP team on, but it's not something they're directly involved in.
Yeah, if I can just embellish on that point about inclusive growth as well, and we're very aware of the challenge of trying to make sure we're engaging with a variety of different geographies and communities actually across Bristol and the West of England region, but specifically the communities that are most impacted and surround the region area. It's mentioned briefly in the paper, and probably there's an opportunity to go into a little bit more detail in the conversation, but around inclusive growth being really central to the work that we're doing. We've developed an inclusive and sustainable growth strategy to kind of frame our work and to make sure that we're using that prism to look through all the opportunity that we've got for the regeneration of both the station but then beyond into St Philip's Marsh as well. And we've worked closely with communities that are in the directly affected areas, but also as well beyond that as well, to develop our social value charter, or BTQ charter, which is beginning to seize the opportunities for the development that's already taking place in the area, but are expected to obviously come forward over the next few years, few decades in fact, for the opportunity for people to really engage with the opportunity there. So that's both trying to inform and influence the kind of the design and the type of occupation and economy that they see within the space, but also as well making sure that there's clear pathways into that work. We're conscious at the moment, we work really closely with the Bristol City Council scheme Building Bristol, which is an element of the LPA. I'm conscious I've got Simone right in front of me now and I can't see what she's saying, or expression, but we're working very closely with the LPA in order to line up the opportunities that come through Building Bristol. So that's obviously focused specifically around construction jobs. But we're really aware that there's a changing dynamic in terms of the economy that sits particularly in St Philip's Marsh, where you've got much more traditional blue-collar work at the moment, and a lot of it actually accessible to local communities. We're going to see a lot of change, particularly as kind of the economy changes with the welcoming of the University Enterprise Campus, which will open in the next year. So we're very conscious that there's a change in the type of employment and the ability to access and approach that. So we're lucky that we're able to kind of really drive those concerns and those challenges about access to work at this stage as well. We're really aware of the need to pull together a long-term plan, think about approachability and access into those jobs beyond just construction skills work, which is still really important for the changing nature of the economy in the area. But we're really, really conscious of both the physical access onto St Philip's Marsh. It's quite a constrained site, obviously, as people be familiar, but also as well the kind of cultural aspect of that as well, making sure that people feel genuinely able to approach and get involved. And the charter work is a kind of first step on that journey in order to of celebrate, I suppose, the change that's beginning to take place and make sure that we're making sure that that is working for local people and residents across Bristol and the west of England. I'm happy that we could maybe pick up in a bit more detail, because I'm conscious the paper itself doesn't dive into a lot of background on that and some of the work that we've been doing. Chair.
Thank you, Simon.
I could go on a lot longer, but
thank you for that. Can I just add on that something I didn't mention at the start, but I circulated round beforehand. We had received representation from the ward councillors for Central Ward, and with specific reference to the Redcliffe area to the south of the site. If you imagine, the Portwell Lane and the Brunel Mile, and then the council housing that we have to the south of that site. And I think it was something, I know we've talked a lot in our conversations about the involvement with communities adjacent to the St Philip's Marsh and to Temple Quarter, and I just wanted to mark that that we need to make sure when we're doing that work that we include that area as well to the south of St Mary Redcliffe as going forward. So we'll pick that up with you in due course. The next person I had was Serena.
Yeah, my question's around the master plans, really. So I'm concerned that we're slightly putting the cart before the horse, and that currently we do have development popping up in the Temple Quarter area, but it seems to me that there's not a cohesive master plan. I know there are two master plans, so my question is really, at what stage will the master plans be at when the PSP is appointed, and how much work will there still be to be done? Because really, to be frank, at the moment it just seems it's a bit of a PBSA fest, and not quite the design we're looking for, really. It's sort of a bit piecemeal, and I would have thought the master plan should be well in place by now. Plus, there's been a lot of consultation done in the past, which sounds quite impressive actually in the papers, and I just wonder what's happening to that as well. So sorry, I've squeezed several points and questions in there.
Sorry, just working out which one. So just in terms of the master plan, so we do have a master plan for phase 1, Temple Meads West, which is we've worked up to inform going out to the market to select our private sector partner. We will then sort of regroup on that work when we have the private sector partner in place, and that master plan has been worked up very closely with the local planning authority and colleagues across Bristol. In respect of St Philip's Marsh, and we share your concerns around development and how that's coming forward, Prime Partners have been appointed to undertake a master plan. They have just finished their baseline work looking at the area, and over the next couple of months they will be working up optioneering, which we can then review, and certainly by the autumn time we will have a master plan in place that we're able to, has been subject to consultation, but also then to be able to be developed with the PS, our private sector partner as well. And that's being worked up closely with the regeneration and also local planning authority as well. Clem, do you want to mention on consultation?
Yeah, so Karen mentioned the kind of process that's happening on the master plan. It's worth saying, and I think it's in the paper, that the kind of early engagements and not formal consultation on the kind of final draft master plan will start in mid-May. Well, that's the date we're aiming at. That's for the St Philip's Marsh master plan, with an aim for a kind of more formal consultation in the autumn. And then I guess the kind of broader point around consultation more generally on it is that, and I actually made a note that when we went out to engage on the Southern Gateway earlier this year, we actually shared the kind of list of stakeholders and community groups we were going to go out to with ward councillors in the immediate area. We'd be happy to do that. Again, I note the concerns about Redcliffe, southern Redcliffe as it were in particular, but we'd be happy to share that plan for comment, because it is a really big area, and Simon touched on it, that there's obviously outlying communities in the outlying area, but actually the scale of the change is going to impact the whole city, if not the region. So we, dare I say, the more the merrier in terms of comments on that plan as we go, because it is going to be a significant piece of work.
Thank you, Clem. Are you wanting to come back in on this, Serena?
Just wondered, I don't think we've seen the first master plan. No. So to me, my issue is that a lot of the process seem opaque. So it's about that transparency and what we're seeing when, and I'm sure other colleagues will have points around that as well.
Sorry, I can't hear at the moment. Could you say that again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I don't think we've seen that master plan. It is on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my question, and that was what we were discussing. Yeah. So I don't think we've seen that master plan you're referring to.
It hasn't been out to formal consultation at the moment or engagement, and the reason for that is because we need to work it up further in the autumn time this year, and it will then be out for consultation. Sorry, Claire.
No, we were talking about the first one that you just said that you've done.
West.
Yeah, the Temple Meads West one.
Sorry, I should say I can't hear at the moment because I've got an ear problem, so that's why. So I'm very sorry. Yeah, so we can share the master plan work that's been done to date for Temple Meads West area. And then we'll be working it up again sort of towards the end of this year once the private sector partner is on place. You may have seen it in some parts previously in terms of the engagement work. I think Clem from...
Yeah, and again, we can share some of the kind of feedback from that, but we did a program of early engagement on it in kind of late 23, early 2024, so it kind of finished around this time last year, and I think some of that is in the pack, but we can certainly share the where it is at this point in time. And then just to reiterate on the phase 2 master plan, that's in very early stages, and we'll be going out with kind of very early kind of emerging options and things in the date is slightly up in the air still, but mid-May is what we're targeting.
Thank you for that. I have Paula next.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm going to ask, I've got one question and sort of, I suppose, a bit of a recommendation. This question is very specific, actually. When I used to chair Growth and Regen back in the day, and at the time when we were getting together with Legal in General, it was very helpful often to have closed briefings to get oversight of what was happening. And I'm sure a lot of my colleagues here feel the same as I do, which is that, you know, it's fantastic, everything's happening now, and it's really rushing. It feels as if it's really moving, and that's amazing. And, you know, I personally really want to see all that regeneration. But at the same time, there's a certain amount of tension between really feeling that we have enough democratic oversight of what changes are being proposed. And very often, us as councillors, and we're saying it here today, like we don't have enough, we haven't seen the plan, we don't know what you're doing, we don't have enough information. And certainly, when we go back to our residents, no matter how hard we try to do consultation, they always come back and say, we weren't properly consulted. I didn't know about this, you didn't tell me, this is not my view of it, I don't know what's happening. So, the first question is, when I looked at the papers, especially in the Memorandum of Information documents, I'm intrigued by these dialogue sessions which are happening in June to September. And when I read that, I felt, and I don't know if the rest of my colleagues support this, but I feel that a closed briefing after the first dialogue session, where you meet with your PSP and it's all been sussed out and there's this general, you know, what's happening, I would really like to know at that stage what's being considered, and then maybe a second briefing before you go to the fourth dialogue, because that to me seems really crucial. We want to have partners, but I want to know who the partners are and what their aims and their ideas and their vision for Bristol is. So that would be a request. I would ask for that if that would be possible. And the second thing is a recommendation. You won't be surprised to hear me banging on about deliberative processes, because I'm always going on about it. And I don't just mean citizens' assemblies. We don't need to have a citizens' assembly for everything. But we spend a huge amount of money now doing all the consultations on Western Harbour, and still people will say, you know, not in my name, you're not doing it. And all the people who turn up are very invested. The benefits of this is that we are completely upstream of it all. There is time now to get a group, a stratified group, a randomly selected Bristol citizens who can have full information about what the possibilities are and let them make some choices. And then at the end of all of this, we councillors then have a mandate to say, we're doing what Bristolians want. So why don't we do that? Why do we never learn to actually, I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge, expensive citizens' assembly. It can be a citizens' jury. It could be deliberative polling. There's a whole load of mechanisms that could be there. And I'd really love to hear that you were embracing this.
Okay, thanks. John wanted to come back and...
Yeah, I'm sure the team will want to respond on some of those points, Councillor, but I just wanted to make a couple of points, if that's okay. So thank you. I mean, we can certainly build much more consultation engagement into the work that we're doing. Obviously, we're bringing the briefing here today, and I was really keen to do that. I'd like to get a regular rhythm of these briefings coming formally to committee so they're in public, but I'd be very content to have similarly alongside that perhaps informal briefings where we can have more of a, you know, you can have more of a discussion with the team. That would, I think, would be helpful, and I suggest we plan that in now because it's over the next, you know, couple of years that things are really going to be happening. You mentioned the Temple Island, I think, once before. I mean, the dynamic is slightly different here in that it's obviously the LLP which is running the dialogues, it's a joint venture arrangement with Homes England and with the Combined Authority, and we're a very important partner in that, but we are a partner. That said, I'm sure we can provide briefings as we're going along, but it is obviously the Temple Island deal was a deal being done by the council purely in its own name. But look, and your points about consultation and engaging with citizens and residents are really helpful. But I think the key thing is we definitely want this committee, it's the key committee for this work, to feel cited. And also, you know, councillors as more generally as we go along. So I think if we get a regular set of formal committee reports coming here, this is, you know, view this as a key important first step in that, but also some informal briefings in beforehand so you can have more of a dialogue with me and the team. I'd welcome that.
Thank you.
I mean, if that could be grafted onto the timelines so that, you know, it was shown that it was going to be there.
Yeah, okay. And I, as chair, I will be keen to make sure that we are briefed, both in public, but also, yes, you know, informal briefings at appropriate points. And I was really keen that we have this, and indeed really keen that we have this month, straight after the procurement launch, rather than you know, in June, which was floated at one point. Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see Marvin's legacy come into fruition. It's fantastic to see that. I see all the nervousness now amongst our Green colleagues. My main point is accessibility, actually, and disability and access, and how we kind of make sure we weave that in, because these sites are amazingly positive, potentially, but we've got to, I think, make sure we deliver the benefits, really, to local people and our disabled colleagues and citizens of Bristol, but also visitors through this site. So I just wanted to just emphasise the importance of disability and making this work as best as possible. I see some of the proposals around, so like making bus stops accessible. Yeah, there's some really good stuff in here. I'm just wary that there's some potential negative impacts as well, and I want to sort of mitigate against that and try and do our best to include disabled people in the sort of design of this as we go forward.
Thanks, Kelvin. Clem?
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's something we're really aware of. I think, I guess, kind of historically, primarily around the station as the kind of main access point, but actually it's something that is directly being fed into, or will be fed into, the emerging master plan. So we have a kind of long-ish standing group called the Temple Quarter Accessibility Advisory Group. So that has members from kind of across different. Originally, it was representatives from access organisations, so Centre for Deaf, Wessel, that kind of thing. It's evolved slightly, and actually, we kind of say if anyone wants to join it, they're welcome to. We've also recently come to a kind of slightly more formal arrangement with Wessel and their weight team, the access and inclusion team, where I don't know if retainer is the right word, but we've essentially commissioned them across the year. Not on at the moment, we're kind of working out what the program is, but so that when we've got things, so for example, the first access audit we did was with them on the Southern Gateway proposals, and that's a kind of much more kind of formal relationship, whereas the advisory group meetings are slightly more kind of, if people want to come, we'll bring things to it. I think it's also worth saying as well that we're also encouraging other developers in the area to kind of take the same approach. So Legal and General at Temple Island, they've been to our access group on a number of occasions. Fair to say they've had some forthright feedback, but that's exactly what the group is there for. And then we're also working with Network Rail, so they have I can never remember what the acronym stands for, their BEAP panel, Built Environment Accessibility Panel. We've been to that, and we're also in conversation with them about having a station-wide accessibility strategy. So I guess long answer to say that we're really thinking about it, and we're kind of actively trying to be part of that.
One just quick comeback. So hopefully that will extend beyond the access to the station. It extends that to other things. That's great. As former chair of Wessel, I'm very happy that you're using them and consulting with them, and other parties are using them. Also extending to jobs as well. Obviously the government are going to be bringing a big push on disabled people and getting access to jobs, making sure we kind of we do that bit of piece of work as well.
Thank you, Kelvin. So I'm looking to start wrapping this up, but I had Jenny, Tom and Mark on my list. So Jenny.
So my general theme is that I feel over the last year I have been very under-informed about this project's progress. Prior to that, I've been on the local plan working group. I've been on growth and regeneration scrutiny since 2021, and I felt that we were getting reasonably good updates from the scrutiny perspective, and I feel like I felt some surprise that the size of phase one and the shape of phase one isn't just like, the bit just next to the station. It's gone quite a long way now, and I don't think that that's bad. I don't think that the status of it is bad, but I think it reveals that there's perhaps been some governance opacity. So, as John was saying, he's keen to see us, keen to bring papers here regularly. I'd request that that's like 3 times a year, maybe, or like when there are milestones that are perhaps important. Serena's whispering quarterly in my ear, but I don't know whether that might be a bit too many. I don't know. I think 3 is probably fine. Every 4 months. I think that the engagement with councillors at a ward level needs to be more less just like, we'll visit them when we feel like it. I think that it would be good to bake in some reasonably regular meetings with them, even if that's, you can liaise with them, but it might be that when you brief Andrew and I, when you're coming here with a paper, perhaps you would brief the central councillors at the same time, so that they would get a bit of foresight on the paper and be able to comment on it before it's brought to committee if there are any issues with it. In terms of the master plan, both of them, I would quite urgently like to see where those are. I don't think it's very clear from the papers what's been published already, what's been agreed already. I think that should, at a minimum, be coming to the local plan working group, but possibly the phase 2 St Philip's Marsh one. It's possible that it would be preferable to bring it here rather than the local plan working group. I will allow you to take a view on that, though, Andrew. I think that's my main points. Otherwise, I do really like what's in the paper. I would like to just say, I don't think that any of this work has been bad. It's just that it's very, very important that this has sufficient public scrutiny. It's very, very important that this has sufficient, of an audit trail, and it's quite difficult for me to get a sense of it because there has been a bit of a big gap from my perspective. I mean, that might not be true from the perspective of the leader and of Andrew, because they've been getting these briefings, but they've been closed, and I don't think that it's acceptable to keep going in that way.
Thanks. I might respond to that. So yeah, I mean, hands up if I've, if there's things that I've been briefed on that I've not passed on. I don't think there's been anything significant. So I think in as far as a lot of the focus of the Temple LLP over the past year has been internal governance related, in terms of getting things lined up between the various partners, getting the options in place, appointing the chair, rather than the sort of more, for want of a better word, public-facing elements of the Temple Quarter beyond those that we've seen. So the Southern Gateway, for example, which all members had an opportunity to be briefed upon, and the like. But yeah, hands up if I've not, maybe not communicated as well as I could, and I'll take that on the chin as a learning point. There have been some points made on this so far, in terms of things like the importance of master planning, and Simon and Clem will tell you that I've banged on about that in our meetings as well, and really keen to see progress on that. Part of the reason we've not seen that is because of lining up the getting in place the partner and going out for that. So there have been things that have maybe organisationally meant that progress hasn't been as obvious as it could have been. But yes, potentially we could have done a better job at communicating what was and what was happening to members. So I'll take that one. John wanted to come in.
Yeah, all understood, Councillor. So as I said before, we'll set out a clear plan for both things that are coming here, and as you say, that will come via the PCCB process that you're involved in, and we're happy to involve the Central Ward councillors in that process as well. And then we'll have these more informal sessions. I suggest perhaps we start with the master planning process as the first one of those, because that is, I think, one that will be well suited to have that sort of dialogue. But I also would just like to say the team have worked hard on community engagement, but we're hearing the message very clear, and we'll double our efforts.
Thank you, John. I've got Tom and then Mark. Oh, it was Mark first, apparently. Okay, Mark.
Thank you. Possibly a bit contrary to some comments. I actually did feel quite well briefed, but I do sit on the local plan, so I accept that's not with everyone. I think it'll be welcome to have those the briefings going forward, ideally online. And actually, we often found in the past that online briefings, sometimes during holidays, often because we're quite busy otherwise, but there's often a way to do it. So I do accept that. and it'll be good to get those going forward. I personally don't think you need to go with citizens' assemblies and stuff like that. I think we are a panel of Bristolians elected by our peers, and we do sit here, and I don't want to confuse the picture, but people will accept that. But I'm more than happy with the report, and I'm more than happy to support it today.
Thank you, Mark. Tom, then.
Just before I dive into my substantive points, but perhaps it'd be helpful to have a summary of all the political engagement that there has been since last May. I'd find quite urgent need to come to a public session, but if that could just be sent round, I think that'd be useful. I think, to be fair, like, your leader's well briefed, so that sounds like an internal party management issue for you as a Green Party to sort out what your leader is and isn't communicating to you, to be fair, rather than that come in here. Well, so anyway, to my substantive points, it's really good to see this progress update. I'm really pleased with the work. I know how much hard work has gone in, and from my time as a cabinet member as well for housing, being quite close to some of this coming forward, it's really good to see the milestones we've now reached with setting up the LLP, and that we can see now with the Temple Court Enterprise Campus going up, that's starting to sort of spur on the rest of the regeneration of the area. And I think the thing for me that I'll keep harping on about it as a cabinet member is make sure we get mixed and balanced communities. And this, I've got a 12-page report here, doesn't have a single mention of affordable housing in it. And I think that the thing that I would, again, sort of just want to go back to is making sure we get that affordable housing strategy sorted out as part of the master plan. My expectation is that will come forward explicitly and very clearly within it, because we do need to make sure that noting viability challenges around bringing things forward, that we have thought that through and thought about all that needs to come forward in later phases, earlier phases. How's that going to work with all the infrastructure that's going to need to be addressed? So I think, I'll continue, as I always do, to sort of fly the flag for getting affordable housing and truly affordable housing delivered as part of this regeneration, and making sure that we do deliver on that, because it ties back into that whole kind of inclusive growth approach, and making sure that people can share in the benefit, both in terms of job skills, affordable workspaces, but also potentially living in these communities as well. And it doesn't become a place that everyone, we have this regeneration, this wonderful opportunity, and then people end up being priced out from it. So I think I just bring us back to that is really the key thing. But it is really great to see how much progress there's been. So well done to everyone that's been involved.
Thank you, Tom. Just to answer from my point of view, so I have monthly meetings with Clem and Simon and Karen, along with the chairs of Transport and Connectivity and Homes and Housing Delivery, to discuss things. And the leader is part of the board. Oversight group. Yes, I knew I was going to get that wrong. Leader of the council as well. So obviously he'll be kept abreast of the thing is, and I note your comments on affordable housing, and that is certainly when Temple Quarter is mentioned in the West of England Combined Authority Planning and Housing Board groups. It's very often in connection with that affordable housing piece. So I know that is something that is on the agenda. But I note your comments. So a final hand from Serena, and then we will move to a vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think everyone in this room is ambitious for the best, and this is a bit of a rallying call, I think, that we need to think of the longer picture here. I mean, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, something really special. It's probably the biggest scale regeneration in Europe, but especially in the city's seen since the Blitz. So it's really important we just aim for the best, and I know we all want to do that, but it's so easy in the development process, isn't it, to things slip like affordable housing, or there's some compromise. But I think we can demand the best for Bristolians, and we're sitting here representing our resident citizens, not developers, not necessarily. So we really want to aim high, I think. And at the moment, because of the master plan process, maybe it's a little bit of a catch-up going on, and I'm not party to it, so forgive me if I'm wrong. It does seem like we have, as I said, PBSA slightly run away at the moment. I think in the papers it says we've already breached the limit in the emerging local plan for St Philip's anyway, so I just not quite sure how we tackle that one. But yeah, let's aim high, which I know you're doing, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move to the vote now, and I am going to take everything together because I've not heard any particularly dissenting voices. So the proposal is that we note the update of the BTQ LLP as outlined in the report. We note that the Executive Director Growth and Regen has taken necessary steps to terminate the agreement for lease and recover possession of Redcliffe Wharf and to return the £516,000 Brownfield Land Release Fund, and we authorise the Executive Director Growth and Regen in consultation with the Director of Finance to agree the terms for and thereafter conclude option agreements and associated documentation with the BTQ LLP for Redcliffe Wharf as identified at Appendix A3, subject to satisfaction of the best consideration test being met under Section 123 brackets 1 Local Government Act 1972. So can I have a seconder for that? Jenny, thank you. And all in favour? And that's everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you, Simon, Clem and Karen, for coming along and answering our questions today. Okay, so now we're moving on to agenda item 9, an update on planning performance improvement. And this is Simone.
Indeed. And in the interest of time, I'm wondering, should I just gallop very quickly through the updated performance slides that Amy sent round earlier, or do you want to go straight into questions?
If there's a mood in the room to going straight to questions, then let's go straight to questions. I have to confess I've not actually seen the slides that Amy sent round, so I shall look them up whilst you're doing that.
I mean, I'm happy to give a very quick canter through if that would be helpful.
No, it's fine. If is everyone content to go straight to questions? I've seen a series of nods. Yeah. So if we go to that, so any questions, Toby?
Hello. So I am pleased to see that things are going in the good direction since the last time we had this report, which was 6 months ago in September. In September, you gave projections for December, which I noted on the record at the time that I felt were quite optimistic, both the number of decisions made and the number of applications more than 26 weeks old. I thought there was quite a dramatic improvement in 3 months, and the new stats show us that indeed I was right to be sceptical, because those stats didn't improve to that extent from your projections. In this update, you're giving similarly optimistic projections on those two metrics from now until June. What's with the same kind of staffing and the report noting that most of the improvements have been stable since September. So what's different now that allows you to be so optimistic about the position will be in June?
So two things. I think in terms of the older applications, we've got a much better understanding of how they're actually composed, whereas before it was much more a sort of guesstimate, so to speak. And I think we definitely have a much better understanding. It may help if we actually go to that slide, if you can bring that up, slide 4, which shows the composition of the cases by age. Now, we didn't have that previously, and actually it has shifted a lot. So retrospectively, we have been tracing it, but we didn't show it as a histogram previously. And certainly before Christmas, basically, if you look at the first 3 bars on the left, they are largely the ones which are roughly in time, versus the last 3 on the right, out of time. And before Christmas, that was still more of sort of 50-50 split, whereas now it's 2/3, 1/3, and constantly improving. Because the key, what we need to achieve is basically not letting the cases go into the old into the old territories, and we need to determine them before they get too old. And so the cases that we had before, it's still different cases in terms of the old cases. They're not the same ones as before Christmas, but not, although some of them are. And I think that's where we've developed additional strategies in making sure that we don't let the new ones get old, but also at the same time clearing the old ones. Where we're still trying to understand better, so actually thinking that all of the ones that are old, like older than 26 weeks, that's bad and that it's always our fault, that would be wrong as well. Because actually there's quite a number in that category where it's basically at the, many of them we could have refused by now. The fact that they're still there is we're negotiating to turn them into an approval. And hence, in that sense, it's a good thing as well that we're still working on getting them into the right place rather than having refused them. And so I think we are, given the progress we've made, I think we are in a very different place. And while it may seem optimistic that 150 by June may not be achievable, I think it was for us still important that we set a stretching target that we're aiming for, rather than not being ambitious. And given that within those older cases there are many that are very close to getting over the line, I think that's what makes me more optimistic. Turning to the other one, I think that you were alluding to, it's around whether or not we are getting to the green line of the ideal numbers of case in hand. Again, I think, and maybe if which slide is that? Slide 6, shall we move to that? I think the key is that we continue in the right direction. Ideally, we do want to speed up again and make sure that we do get to the green line by summer. What we have also noticed, though, particularly over this last quarter, is that actually the number of applications has gone up quite a lot, which meant that actually if we recalculated the green line on the basis of what we have been receiving over the last quarter, that would need to come up, in which case, again, we would actually be meeting it sooner. But again, there is a number of things in the pipeline which makes it quite likely that also the number of applications coming in will drop again because of there's a big fee change coming on tomorrow, actually. And also a number of other things that were listed in the last slide that are around increasing the productivity. So the dashboard that we're expecting to go live in April, as well as sort of an AI pilot that we've been working hard to get the go ahead from our digital colleagues that we can go live with that, is imminent. So there's a number of things in the pipeline that make me optimistic that we can accelerate and therefore achieve on both accounts. But ultimately, yes, I can't give you a hard and fast commitment, only a degree of confidence that we can achieve this. And ultimately, it's what I would still emphasize again. We are going in the right direction. The team has been doing a fantastic job in making amazing improvements. We've practically halved the amount of cases in hand than there have been even before the very bad backlog started. So, I think, therefore, I would just say let's focus on the great achievements that have been delivered and just accept that we are, that we do need to continue to set ourselves stretching targets.
Can I just come back on that quickly?
Yeah, sure.
So I don't want to downplay the achievement, because you can look at that long-term graph and see it's coming down and down and down. That's great. But I do think it's important in performance management of anything that having a good target is a good thing, an objective, a goal to try and meet. But a projection and a target are two different things. And if your projection doesn't meet the target, then that's when you have to put in place actions to help you to then meet the target. So having a projection which is overly optimistic is not helpful. Having an optimistic target is helpful.
Right, well, in that case, call it an optimistic target. But clearly what we are doing is constantly monitoring and further refining and improving our actions so that we do achieve it, if at all possible.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, Councillor, I remember your questioning beforehand, and I think it's very fair to hold us to account in this way. So yes, we'll look at the forecasts going forward, and they have to be realistic, don't they, as well? But look, really good progress has been made by Simone and the team. We just need to make sure we're building all the processes in to really drive that going forward, don't we? Yeah, thank you.
Jenny and then Tom.
Sort of building on what Toby's just said, like one of the reasons I might want a forecast rather than a target is because we have political priorities around delivering our statutory duties, not just in handling planning cases, applications, but also planning enforcement, which is something that you've been talking about a bit for quite a while as like, oh, this is our next thing that we want to focus on and improve. And that improvement journey has somewhat been deferred a little. Not, what I'm talking about is, does your team need more resources? Should we start asking for that? Like, because I remember, when was it? It was nearly a year ago. You said, oh, it's going to be amazing by Christmas, whatever. And I had my skeptical face on, and we've been through this a few times. I would like to advocate for more resource for your team, and you've come here several times and said, no, it's fine, we need fewer resources, we're actually doing a really great job. And I'm like, you are doing a great job, you've made loads of performance and efficiency improvements, but I still feel like, well, maybe we could help you by advocating for more resource for you. But we can't do that unless we have sort of accurate forecasts and we're able to all sort of agree what the best course of action is. Because at the moment, I don't know. Like I'm willing to take you at your word if that's what you're really committed to on the basis of what's in this paper, that you've got enough resource for what you need for this improvement journey, for our goals with performance for the whole planning department. But like, I'm really asking, like, what would another 0.5 or 1 person be good for? Would that be good? Should we try to get that?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I wonder if for the next iteration of this we present a forecast which might have a range of sort of progress scenarios, which might then look at how additional capacity might look in terms of applying additional resources. We have to be really mindful that there is probably not a service in the council that could not benefit from more capacity. You mentioned enforcement. We know enforcement is very important to the city, to citizens, to members, and somewhat nationally to the credibility of a planning system. Actually, it's not it's not fee earning, obviously, in its own right. So we'd have to be able to ensure that we could cover the cost of additional capacity somehow. But I just wonder whether that might give you a bit more granularity on the next iteration of progress.
That might be helpful.
That.
And I think also one of the reasons I was hesitant about asking for this earlier as well was because I knew that this fee change was going to come in and behaviours might change and forecasts might change. So I think, I'm happy to keep waiting for more information, but as long as we can be a bit agile about it and be realistic, that's fine by me.
Just to add to what Alex has said there, and absolutely, I think we need to. If we're thinking of it as a forecast, then we do need to think of it in a range, and but also where we do need to then unpack it even further in terms of what's currently in the old cases and so on. And it's always been a balancing act in terms of how much to invest in that rather than in clearing cases. The other point to make is around just the type of resource, and where we certainly, I'm strongly of the view, and I think that has paid off, is that we've invested in growing our own and having a salaried resource, and that I think that is still right. And in that sense, having as an example, just having an agency worker for a period of time, I don't think would help us that much. It's not that it wouldn't help, but it's just I think we are certainly prioritizing and investing in growing our own and making sure that, and that's where we are considering some smaller changes. And just to mention enforcement, because there has been some improvement as well. There is a short narrative on that in the report, not in the slides, but where over the last year we've again decided 100 cases more than had been notified to us new. So that is a very big reduction, like a 25% reduction if you take 400 cases as the overall that came in. And actually just earlier we had a workshop, an internal workshop around how can we increase the productivity in enforcement and make sure we make much faster progress, because it's not just about numbers, it's about behaviours and skills as well. And that's where we're focusing efforts now, because there are, like I said, there are things very close to fruition which should really help and make quite a step change in productivity. And if we can facilitate it that way, I would say then it's much better if we can do it that way than having to increase our financial burden, so to speak, just knowing how stretched the organisation overall is.
Thank you, Simone. I've got Tom and then Paula on my list, and then I might look to start drawing things to a close.
Thank you. A few things. I want to start with statutory consultees, because I know historically, other than resource challenges, which are well documented, particularly in terms of the state of local government funding over many years, one of the big challenges was getting statutory consultees to respond on time in some cases. And so I was just interested in drawing out a bit more of, is that now sorted? Is that still a challenge? If it is still a challenge, is there particular statutory consultees where you're still having challenges? And if so, kind of why is that? And then I'll come back on my other bits.
That's a really good point. And that was definitely a key challenge. And not just internal statutory consultees, but also external statutory consultees. And actually quite a number of those stuck in the over 26 weeks place where that is the reason. And it can be it's quite a multitude of things. It's not always the same ones, otherwise it would be easier to tackle. There has been a ministerial statement only about 10 days or so ago, which I think is really helpful, because it reinforces well, 2 points. A, that the external statutory consultees also need to get their act together and respond quickly, and to be more proportionate as well, that they don't need to respond on everything. And it gives us the license to be much more, how can I say, discerning, where we really need to wait for their response and where we can just crack on even if they haven't responded. And that's what we're doing now. Internally, again, we have made progress. We've made good progress. I wouldn't say it's completely sorted, but certainly, again, some of the work that I've mentioned there in the last slide about ongoing improvement work is bedding in an approach with all of them that makes sure that A, they're much more proportionate as well, that they don't need to respond on everything, that we have standing advice for stuff that happens a lot and where we can just train the planning officers up to deal with those sort of situations properly. I think, BNG, for example, was a massive big learning curve, not just for us, across the country. And that is, for example, one of those where, particularly on smaller schemes, we think the planning officers can recognise the good from the bad, so to speak, and therefore, so that the experts only then really need to get involved on those tailored cases where they absolutely need to get involved. So, yes, lots of progress, but I wouldn't say we're completely there.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more to it. It kind of links to my next point. I was just reflecting on the planning and infrastructure bill which was introduced to Parliament about 3 weeks ago. And one of the things in the press release that it references is the sort of the planning system that's running at a deficit of £362 million nationally in the recent year, showing the sort of the challenge of the amount of resources actually needed to go into the planning systems, regardless of whichever political party and what they might say about the reasons for the issues. There is a resource challenge, and it's good to see that one of the things that bill will bring forward is the ability for councils to be able to set their own fees rather than be constrained on a lot of them by sort of the national government. So hopefully that will go some way to moving things forward. So the thing I'm really reflecting on is, Labour's got a very big ambition nationally to get to 1.5 million homes over the course of this Parliament. Inevitably what that's going to mean is more work for the planning departments, isn't it, in terms of being able to get those schemes through, as well as obviously getting existing permissions built out, which is a challenge. So I think that resource point is important. Sort of back to Councillor Bartle's point, is just knowing actually what could that resource look like, just so we know, because as this bill comes through, obviously there'll be that ability to do a bit more of that self-financing point as well. Obviously, how long the bill will take to get through Parliament is another matter. But I think there's some really good opportunities, significant streamlining of the planning system that's coming forward nationally, that I'm hoping we'll see some of the benefits of that locally, as well as how hard your team are working. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Paula.
I always hate people on committees who talk about their own wards, and I'm not doing it once but twice today. But it is a more general point. I think it's really worth drawing attention to number 6, especially the local listed building consent order that is out for consultation now. It is a pilot and it's in Clifton, but it's a really positive thing. It's really good. I actually remember the first time I ever spoke to you, Simone, when you just arrived. It was about some residents of my ward who were waiting 5 months for a listed building or a certificate of lawfulness. And it seemed such a futile thing. We spoke about it. And then a year ago, when this committee started, I was saying, let's just set a whole set of regulations. And you said, just let me do it on my own in a timely manner. So here we are. You followed through on your word. So thank you very much. And I think it will save a huge amount of trouble. I'd be interested to see what the consultation feedback is like from residents who perhaps put heritage above. I mean, it's a question of managing that. But I certainly think that the proposals as laid out are something that I would support. So thank you for that. And hopefully it'll be rolled out across the city as a consequence.
Thank you indeed. Actually, that was one thing that we wanted to touch on, because it's a really great progress that we've made to be able to start the consultation on the local listed building consent order, which when once approved, and it will come to this committee before before that can happen. So the consultation currently going on, then once the consultation finishes, clearly we need to digest what has come out of it, but then bring it to the committee, and then hopefully it can be approved. At that point, so once it becomes an active order, that means it would establish permitted development rights for solar PV panels identified in those areas in the order. And you're right. So it probably will lead to a small reduction in applications because they don't then need to seek planning permission. In order to do it, you have to do all the work up front. You have to analyse basically where is it okay to give those permitted development rights and where would it not be. And hence, the reason why we've been able to do it is because we had students from UE helping us with doing that analysis, which otherwise we probably couldn't have done in parallel to clearing all the applications. And hence, the speed of rollout to other areas is it ultimately comes back to, can we prioritize the resource for that? And same, I mean, the first is always the hardest, because also, like we've had to produce some guidance to go alongside it, that you wouldn't have to necessarily, reproduce that. Also, Clifton has the most listed building, which is why we chose it as as the first area. So you wouldn't get the same benefit necessarily in other areas, but equally wouldn't be quite the same amount of work to do. But yeah, it's definitely something we are hoping to be able to do, but I wouldn't be able to give you a forecast nor a target around how soon we would roll it out.
If I may, Chair, we are in discussions with the Mayoral Combined Authority, along with our counterparts in neighbouring authorities, about how they can help fund capacity around retrofit in conservation areas, so not just listed buildings and not just solar PV. It's not going to be an enormous amount of capacity, but it will be additional capacity coming forward, so that will hopefully take the good lessons we've learned from the Clifton exercise.
May I just add, we are the first in the West of England region to do this. Baines had started the process first, but they haven't got there yet.
Okay, thank you. I was about to draw it to a close. One wee question then, Serena.
I just want to say it's fantastic to see that, and I'm really pleased. I was also going to ask about the rollout, but hopefully that will come to other areas as well. But obviously it's going to save time. It's going to save headaches for residents. So, yeah, may it roll out across the city. And it's great to know we're first. So congratulations.
And I'm going to close this by drawing attention to a slide that hasn't been mentioned yet, but the slide with the rate of non-determination appeals by quarter over the past few years. And I don't know if some of it's maybe down to change of the way the council was working through those old applications, but there's been a real drop-off from the peak at the beginning of last year in appeals for non-determination. I think that's also worth drawing attention to, because ultimately, we obviously want to get the time taken to deal with applications down as far as we can, but we also want to be making those decisions ourselves. So thank you to Simone and the team for that update. We are asked to note the paper, so we don't have to vote on that, and we can consider it noted. But I've been told I have to say that to make clear that it has been so noted. So moving on, Shane, you're the top of the bill again with the quarterly performance report for quarter 3.
Hello. I'll quickly throw in the same offer. If people want to skip over me reading through the report and go straight to questions, then go ahead. I have got something to bring up afterwards, but we'll go through the report part first.
Okay, excellent. Any questions on Shane's report? I know that there there have been a number of, and I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, but there have obviously been a number of conversations previously about how some of those metrics are measured and shown in each quarter. But is there any other questions or comments that people have? No. Okay. So back to you, Shane.
In that case, last time I talked a little bit about how we're currently going through the process of trying to figure out how the new performance structure is going to work under the new corporate strategy. Just thought I'd quickly update that the corporate strategy for 2025 to 2030 is at CLB in April and going to full council at the end of May. Following this, they'll be developing a new business plan performance framework, including new corporate performance metrics, roughly from sort of May to August. So there'll be new performance metrics and new targets set against those. So we'll be sort of organising how that works, sort of making sure that there's a consistent strategy, not just across this area, but across the whole council. So if it is something that is likely to change over the year in a predictable manner, that those things are taken into consideration. Also, in those next couple of months, we're developing the performance framework principles, which is one of the things I just mentioned, including how to support the committees that do not align necessarily with the new priorities in the new corporate strategy. And the timeline for this part will be agreed shortly. So I don't know if anyone's seen bits of the corporate strategy yet, but at the moment there's 5 sort of things, and they don't necessarily align to what the committees are. So we're sort of in discussion about how we'll best to report to the committees on performance within their areas. And is there any questions on that part?
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming and sitting through the whole meeting, and then not being asked any questions. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So that's the close of today's meeting. The next scheduled meeting for the Economy and Skills, I don't know why I just said scheduled. I don't know if that, I don't anticipate there will be one in the in between time. But the next meeting is due to be the 2nd of June at 2 p.m. So mark your diaries.